the messy world that happens before people come into hospital and after they leave. If you're not an orthopaedic surgeon, you may not know, but about 50% of each list is comprised of over 70s, people over 70, and they account for about 85% of the adverse events associated with orthopaedic surgery. So they're quite an awkward bunch, and they all exist outside hospital before they come in, and they all go out from hospital. And the rehabilitation happens outside hospital mostly. And we know that it happens quite badly. We're not very good at optimising people ready to make the most of the surgical opportunity, and we're not brilliant, or it varies enormously at rehabilitation. We also know that they're not just getting older, but there's more of them. So in the sort of northern region, we're expecting, we know, there aren't many certainties, but demography is one of them, and we know that there'll be 1 million more over 70s, creating enormous demand, but we can't possibly meet if we just focus on the hospitals. So the swampy lowlands, a messy kind of world of pre-rehabilitation, rehabilitation is very much our territory. So we're all about optimising technology. Our kit is not as sexy as these liquefying pulse waves, but nevertheless, we do have some sexy kit. So I can tell you a little bit about that, but I want to focus really on some of the work that we do in social care, which sounds strange at a surgical conference, but I want to tell you about some of the infrastructure that we've got available to us that we're part of, so that you understand the opportunities that are available. So because technology is only useful if people use it, and it's often used in unintended ways. And a lot of the technology that we are cited on in this orthopaedic space is actually very adaptable and not always deployed in sort of high fidelity ways. And also there are unintended consequences associated with some of the technologies that we use, which we're not always cited on. So we've got a broad kind of gang associated with our theme that draw on all of the strengths and talents in the kind of NIHR infrastructure available to us at Leeds. Most of these will be familiar. I mean, you heard the BRC outline earlier on. You may not be aware of the Patient Safety Research Centre, which is linked to Leeds, physically based in Bradford, but spiritually, intellectually drawing heavily on the work of the Leeds academics. So we're going to be looking at the safety associated with some of the technologies available to us. While the BRC might provide some of the raw materials and the technologies, we're very much interested in that kind of area of research which is beyond the preclinical and beyond the discovery, and it's about the application of it. Now, niche Leeds you might not have heard of, and in fact I would suspect most of you haven't. But niche is an interesting one because this is a research partnership between the care sector and the domiciliary care sector and community services and academics. And they've been very successful. So what they offer developers and surgeons and clinicians and academics is access to a network of research-ready care home, domiciliary providers, community services, people that operate in that swampy lowland and are often tricky and hard to engage with. And yet the answers, the success to a lot of the technologies and the way we use them and understand them lies in that swampy lowland. So Niche Leeds is headed by Professor Karen Spilsbury, and they've leveraged a really modest investment of just about £100,000, and they've leveraged that up to, I think the last count, they've got about £12 million worth of raw R&D funding, but access to a much bigger pot because they've taken us, for the first time, Leeds is now part of the NIHR National School for Social Care Research, which gives us access to about £50 million worth of R&D monies, which we wouldn't be able to access if we weren't part of that school. But more importantly, it's to answer the kinds of questions that aren't easily fundable by industry or by the NHS. Or definitely not by social care. So it allows us to ask those really messy questions about how people use information, how they use technologies, it's safe, what are the unintended consequences, all the things that these partnerships can help us with. I'm not going to go through what we're what we're going to do for our timeline, other than to say our plan really right now where we're at is about setting up our infrastructure, making sure we're a reactive theme. So we're ultimately going to demand, our success will hang on people coming to us and us facilitating access to that prehabilitation, rehabilitation space. We've got a couple of projects that we're committed to in that first few years. The virtual knee school is a prehabilitation part of this. So Anna Anderson, who led this work, started with a PhD and did some fantastic work looking at the evidence and the theory behind prehabilitation for people who wouldn't ordinarily get access to decent quality prehab for knee replacements. And that work, that feasibility work, sort of translational research level 3 or 4, she's taking that forward, and we plan to take that forward over the next couple of years. The school has recently signed a contract with Get You Better, which is a digital platform. They provide digital services to about 18 or 19 integrated care systems, and that's going to be badged under the theme, and we're going to focus in on understanding how to maximise and optimise that initial exploratory work around the virtual knee school and improve outcomes for patients. One of the things that's not available, it sounds weird, but if you're a developer and you want to target your technology in social care or that space which is before hospital or after hospital, we actually don't know very much at all about what it is that people pay for and consume services want from technology. What's most important to them? So one of the things we're going to do quite early on is a large national study looking at modelling, choice modelling, the preferences of people who pay for and consume technologies in this space, so that developers can have access to that and use it to better design their products. So they've got more of a chance of them being used and sustained and adopted. And equally, academics can use it to understand the markets and segment various markets. And people who commission services can use it to make wiser purchasing decisions about the technologies that they're approached to pay for. Hemant's already mentioned Bernard Van Duren's work on implantable sensors, and we've seen the wearable sensors earlier on. Versus Arthritis very kindly seeded that work, and Hemant highlighted the industrial links there with £5 million of capital injected into that work. But we need to understand it. We need to understand, is the data useful to clinicians? How are they using the data generated by this really exciting technology? What are the consequences for recovery? All of these sorts of questions, these evaluatory questions, are really important. So we're going to take that forward over the next couple of years. But ultimately, what we want to get by the end of sort of the fifth year is a really vibrant community and a portal for people, developers and academics, to access otherwise hard to access areas in community services and social care, as well as for that to optimise that for the hospital inpatient experience and make the most of the scarce resource that is inpatient technologies and facilities and so on. So we're not coming from nowhere. We've done a whole host of foundational work. I'm not going to dwell on these. You can follow these up on the slides. One of the things we haven't spoken about is the kind of catalysing effect of a pandemic on technology in social care. We had a couple of examples. One was point of care testing, which I think Mike Messenger was involved with, a Condor trial. We were involved in that, in facilitating access to care homes and domiciliary services for that technology to make sure that the point of care testing was fit for purpose. We also looked at wearables in the context of contact tracing, which isn't surgical. But what's come out of that experience, and it was a tough experience in the middle of a pandemic, was actually the role of those sorts of sensors in understanding things like mobilisation and safety and quality in this space in domiciliary services and care homes. Areas that are traditionally hidden, but generate useful information for physiotherapists and for clinicians to understand rehabilitation better. I think Hemant's mentioned the sensors earlier on. I mean, the point here is ultimately the space in the market for both kinds of technology. We've got Bernard and the team's work on iSmart and the implantable sensors which go into the knee joint and generate enormous amounts of really detailed data, far more data than the alternatives, which are wearable sensors. But we know nothing, very little, about how people might use that data. Does it have any impact? So that's very much for the next phase, So alongside the technology, there's the experiential implementation science side of rolling that out, which will hopefully enhance the technology. Obviously, the wearable sensors are cheaper and less regulatory burdens, but actually they rely very heavily on compliance and a high fidelity adoption on the part of the people wearing them. And again, we don't know how best to maximise that, so each of which ultimately affects the effectiveness of the technology. So that's very much the space that we're in. So I'm going to draw it to a close there. I mean, as I say, we don't have the machines that go ping, and we don't have the liquefying lasers and pulses and so on, but we are very much open for business. So I guess what I wanted to get out of today was a plea that we can offer access to areas that are traditionally left out of this space. So we really want to hear from developers and companies. We've got a seat, literally a seat, not just metaphorically, a seat at our advisory table for niche leads. We'd love to have an industry voice on that board. We want to hear from scientists, engineers and academics. We worked really closely in the pandemic with engineers, and it was a fantastic experience, and that's provided a platform for which we can develop some of our understanding. We really want to hear, I don't suppose many are here today, but we do want to hear from clinical teams and providers to better understand the needs, and we've got a whole, we hope, by the end of year 5, a generation of clinical scientists who are based in community services and local authorities and so on, who would be keen to help you make the most of your technologies and your services and to do that. And I think one person's mentioned already today, but fellowships and infrastructure and the BRC, but Leeds has got a really good, strong tradition of developing clinical fellows and academic fellows. And we think we offer a really good test bed for the kinds of candidates who want to make a career at technology adoption, implementation, science, and so on. So I'm going to just leave it there. Come and grab me if you see me around until early afternoon. I'd love to talk to you, and thank you very much.